what does the word gutsy mean to you?
I always reference this like Taylor Swift line. It's not it being fearless is not lack of fear, it's having fear but doing something anyway. That's I truly believe in that. Like a lot of times the fear indicates that something is important to you and that you should run towards it. So that's to me what being gutsy really is going after things even though you're scared of them anyway.
You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. Whether you need an inspirational pick-me-up or a swift kick in the mental ass, the Gutsy Podcast is your bi-weekly guide to getting out of your head and back into action. I'm LauraAura, branding and mindset coach for female entrepreneurs, CEO of Works & Co., and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. It's time to fuel your gutsy. You're called for something bigger than where you're currently standing, and you see the proof all around you that it's possible to achieve it. But sometimes the idea of putting yourself out there or having the tiniest possibility to achieve your own greatness can feel a little bit out of reach. Today, we're talking with Cassie Petrey about having the audacity to go for it. Look, she is living proof that you can be a boy band fangirl and eventually grow your own agency that manages the social media for the Backstreet Boys. Why and how? All because she learned valuable skills, believed that she could, and she asked for it. Cassie has been the woman behind some of the most iconic artists' social media marketing, including the Backstreet Boys, Camila Cabello, and Britney Spears. Cassie's the co-founder of CrowdSurf, a leading marketing and music management firm. She is an original fangirl whose tween admiration for the Backstreet Boys led her at the age of 12 to create a newsletter that reached fans worldwide. Then years later, she helped seal the band's decades-long superstardom by introducing them to the next generation of fans. Her company CrowdSurf has worked with tech giants Apple and Google and labels such as Universal, Disney, Sony, Warner, and so many more. Cassie is a Forbes 30 Under 30 and a Billboard 30 Under 30 recipient, and she's been a leading social media and artist management Hollywood powerhouse. Before we chat with Cassie, though, this is the perfect time of year. We're rounding out things to start really thinking about our thoughts and our strategy for how we want to invest our time, money, and effort in the next year. And I don't know about you, but one of the greatest ways, one of the most valuable ways to expand your network, to really hone in on who you are and what you want, and to get valuable insight to move forward is to do it alongside other like-minded people. That, my friend, is why I've built the Gutsy Collective, which is an intentional space for driven women to come together to not only support one another, but to get live coaching, access to online classes, and to gain the tools and the resources so that you can reconnect with yourself, get out of your head, and start making movement forward towards what you really want in this world. So let's do this. I'd love to support you inside the Gutsy Collective. If you go to LauraAura.com, you can click on Join the Gutsy Collective at the top of the page, and I'll see you on the inside really soon. Cassie, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Look, you are a powerhouse. Let's just start off with that. So, woman behind the scenes of some of the most iconic stars, including the Backstreet Boys, Camila Cabello, and Britney Spears. Forbes 30 Under 30. We're talking about Apple and Google. You've been with Hillary Clinton, Disney. Like, we're just not talking about some random ass names here. You do not play small. So I am super intrigued to hear about your story and how all of this has come together, because I know it was not a straight line.
No, not at all. I mean, I grew up in Kentucky, so not exactly like a music mecca or a entertainment industry mecca. I grew up in mostly Louisville, Kentucky, but I spent some time in some other smaller cities smaller towns. They were not cities, smaller towns growing up. And I think I became really interested in the entertainment industry when I was on a softball team when I was 11, and we won the championship, and our prize, and I think about this all the time, how cool this prize was. Our prize was box seats at a Backstreet Boys concert.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and I didn't understand like how cool that was when I was 11, but like I would like that gift now a lot. um, for like any concert, really, like box seat, good setup. You get your food, like you'll get to sit together with everyone you know. You can kind of wander around, like best way to watch a concert with a large group of people. And that was our gift. So I'd never really been to a concert, and I went, and I feel like that sort of changed the trajectory of my life. I really enjoyed that experience. I really enjoyed the community of being with a bunch of people who liked watching the same thing and knowing the same songs. And it was a really awesome experience, and I'll never forget it. And I'm very grateful that that kind of random thing happened in my life, because it ended up being really, really important for me, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just never know when an experience, a circumstance, a comment, an opportunity literally just changes everything for you, right? And it sounds like that was really kind of a seed planting moment that led you down this path. So what did that look like moving into like, going from like what you said, like to say is fangirl to, handling these amazing social media accounts for these incredible stars?
Yeah, so I after that experience, I liked, I learned that I wanted to be a part of a fandom community. And so my first sort of step into that was, and I think a lot of my career has to do with sort of timing of technology trends. So the technology trend at that time was people getting AOL, Netscape, etc., into their homes and being able to personally use the internet. So I was one of the first homes that I knew of that had that, because my grandfather was really into like gadgets and very curious and into like new, technology and, computers and that sort of thing. And he had gotten a laptop and the internet and showed me how to use it. And I learned about email list and wanted to make a Backstreet Boys one. So I started there. I also made a Backstreet Boys fan page. I bought like a book about HTML and learned how to make websites with that. But I always enjoyed combining technology with fandom. And those were, that was kind of the trends of technology at that point. And my fandom for Backstreet Boys grew into other artists. I was like, oh, it's fun to like other artists besides the Backstreet Boys too. It doesn't just have to be them. So I liked a lot of other different artists. I actually went through a Dave Matthews phase when I was 15 and 16, kind of a little bit different from the Backstreet Boys, but a really fun experience in my life. And liked some smaller artists too, liked some local artists. I started helping a couple local artists in Kentucky with their I was helping them with their peer volume page, which I feel like was a very important predecessor to MySpace. So I was helping them like run their peer volume page, upload music, and try to build, fans on those pages, their email list, helping with their websites, their merch stores, selling merch at local shows, that kind of thing. And that really built my resume to be in a really good spot for when I did apply for a job as a Warner Music College rep in Nashville. I got it freshman year when they normally wouldn't give that job to somebody at my age, but because I had shown so much interest and had built a really nice resume. And when I was doing all these things, I wasn't thinking about resume, but they ended up did placing there really nicely. And it showed that I cared about the music industry, which I think is the most important thing that you can show when you're applying for a job in the music business. So I applied, moved to Nashville, was a Warner Music College rep, and that kind of, led me into my first job, first big girl like office job at Warner Music Nashville. I got a job there as a temp with the MySpace boom and ran MySpace pages for all the country artists, which I knew nothing about that genre at the time. I actually really like it now, but I didn't know anything going into it. So that was fun to learn, but I didn't care. I was just so excited to be working with any music artist, and it was a really great experience. And I learned this about myself, that I didn't even have to be a fan of the artist. I liked watching other people have their fan experience, because I was able to relate through a different artist, but I was able to relate and had a really good time helping artists onboard MySpace. And eventually that led into onboarding onto YouTube and Twitter and Facebook as well. But really enjoyed that experience and didn't want to leave it. I did that. I was a temp for 3 years at Warner, and I temped basically parallel to being in college at Middle Tennessee State University. And when it was time to graduate, Warner was very generous. They offered me a couple different jobs, but all of them would have required me moving away from social media because they just didn't have like a community manager job. That just wasn't like, it wasn't a real job yet. I was like, I found what I and liked what I was doing, and my business partner was in a similar situation. So that's where we left Warner and decided to start our company CrowdSurf, and that was in 2007.
Wow. And I just think it's incredible how you were building this thing without even knowing what the long-term incredible effects would be, right? Like I think there's something to say about, being focused and building and growing things, but also sometimes just letting things be and grow naturally and organically and letting them unfold the way that they're intended to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never like set out to be an entrepreneur. Like that wasn't my agenda. I actually did have an entrepreneurship minor in college, but I'm not going to lie, it's not because I was interested in entrepreneurship, at least not consciously, maybe subconsciously, but it was simply because that minor looked like it had the easiest course load. That's literally why I selected that minor. It ended up coming in handy, so I'm glad it worked out the way it did. But when I moved to Nashville to work in music, I never had the vision of like owning my own company. I had the vision of working at a big company and working with big artists, but I didn't anticipate starting my own entity. I was like, oh, I'm going to end up at Warner, or I'm going to end up at Vector Management or something like that. But I never had this sort of the dream of starting my own business. But once I discovered a job that I liked and the job didn't exist, that was the only way to keep having that job, but also simultaneously be able to grow in my career and not be a temp. So that's what we went with, because that was the way to have the job that I wanted. And it's luckily worked out for us. A
Yeah.
lot of stuff was definitely lucky, like timing. I think my business partner and I working out 17 years later is lucky. Because I see a lot of people who have business partners that don't work out, and it's not like we asked each other the right hard questions. I was 20 when this happened. I didn't know about the hard questions to ask. We just got lucky that it both ended up aligning. But a lot of people don't, and I feel grateful that it has worked out and there hasn't been any major issues, because I think we disagree about smaller things, but on the really big stuff, we're all on the same page for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a good partnership goes a long way in just about every aspect of life, right?
Yes.
You have to have the same goals and the same vision, and be able to communicate together. I can imagine that hearing your story, some people might be like, well, that just sounds like it all just fell together easily. But I am certain that there were some side roads along the way. So what are some things that you've learned over the last 15, 17 years as you're
Yeah.
building this business?
Yeah, I mean, none of it's been easy. I think a lot of my time, I do think I've had a lot of luck. Like, I'm not going to discount that, but anybody who's worked with me knows that I am a very hardworking, dedicated, passionate individual, and that definitely goes a long way. A lot of people ask me like, how do you get new clients? Like, how do you do sales pitch? And I only have incoming. I'm not ever sending outbound. And the reason is because the best way to get new clients is to do a good job on the current ones you have, and other people will hear about it or observe. Or another great blessing in the music business is, and I used to not see it as a blessing, but I do now, there's a lot of turnover. And that at first that gave me a lot of anxiety, but turnover has been a great business builder for us, because somebody leaves their job at one record label and goes to another one. We're definitely still working with the current client because they're stressed on bandwidth because they had a team member leave. And then the new record label that person goes to, they hire us. So that's been like one of my greatest business builders. So I would say, one, thing that gave me a lot of anxiety at first, but it's actually ended up being one of the greatest things for building business. So I'm grateful for that trend in that aspect. So don't be scared of turnover, because it can be one of your greatest ways to get new clients. I would say that's, one thing I kind of learned the anxious way. And I would say that, the thing that's been kind of hardest as a business owner, two things. One, learning how cash flow works, because when you start a business, cash flow doesn't work the same way when you're an employee. Like your employer is obligated to pay you by the week or biweekly or however it's set up at that company. But you are, I know sometimes people haven't gotten paid before and that's awful, but generally in most situations, you're going to get paid consistently. When you're a business owner and your clients are paying you like per month or per project, so that money doesn't come in a steady way like that. And I think learning how to anticipate that and build out budget for that was one of the harder things I learned. It's definitely not something I learned in school. You don't learn in school that you work for Disney and they operate on a 90-day payment schedule, but you have to pay your staff prior to you getting paid at that 90 days. So, I think kind of being able to build up enough buffer to handle that, because I was, my company is completely owned by me and my business partner. We don't have outside funding. We didn't have that buffer in the beginning. So that was definitely, a tight time financially, sort of learning that in the first couple of years of business. And I think the other really hard part of running a business is, personnel and staff. Again, stuff that you don't really learn in school, but and stuff that you can't really learn in school necessarily, because the trends change on how to manage and hire people all the time. But that's definitely one of the harder parts of the job, is managing staff, building staff, hiring the right people, training staff to be able to manage staff. I still have a lot to learn on that front, but I definitely have gotten better and seen improvements on it throughout my career. But I would say that's something I struggle with the most. My business partner struggles with the most, and a lot of my other peers that I talk to all have, I think they don't start their business because they want to manage a staff. They start their business because they have a product or a service that they're passionate about, but this part of it does come with it. And it's tough. No matter how, no matter if you hire a general manager, no matter who you hire, you're still going to have to deal with personnel issues to a certain extent. And that is definitely the hardest part of the job for me, for sure.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how challenging and complicated managing people really is, right? You've got personalities, there's expectations, there's just a lot of moving parts. You're managing humans, right? And I don't know about you, but I know myself as a human, I can be all over the place sometimes my own, right? And so you're handling your own stuff, you're handling their stuff, and it can be a really complicated thing. And I think it's an important question to ask yourself is, how do I want to grow my company? And do I want staff, or can I build a business as one or two or three people and that fit my goals of my life and my business as well? It doesn't have to be huge, but it doesn't have to be small. You get to decide.
Yeah. And I'm in a position right now where I don't really want to grow the number of staff that I have, at least not in a significant way. I'm more focused on how do I change some of my revenue models to grow my income versus hiring more staff to grow my income, because I don't, I think I have a good system for the amount I have, but I know, like, if I went, I have about 50 now. If I went from 50 to 100, you have to completely change the process on how you manage those two different size groups of people. Like it's very, even going from like 30 to 50, I realized, like, okay, we're going to need new processes on how we do this stuff, because it's just creates a completely different workflow. So, every time you kind of level up in terms of number of employees you have to almost restructure every internal process you have.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a beast of its own, that's for sure.
for sure.
So you've helped these really amazing artists grow their brands, right? If we think about, small businesses as a brand, these artists are a brand. What are some things that you have found that's been working really well? Some things that have really helped some of these artists to gain some traction?
So I've been doing social media since, I guess 2005, 2006, like even pre MySpace with Pure Volume. And I would say one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to artists in general is being an early adopter to social media platforms is really important. that's held true for the last, 15 plus years. I think it will continue to hold true in the future because it all comes down to math. It all comes down to when somebody signs up for a social media platform, that's the day they're probably going to follow the most people. And if you're not already established, when we go through that big uptick on the bell curve, when everyone's signing up for a platform, you're going to miss the days of when the most follows are happening. So I think it's so important to be somewhat established prior to that big kick up where everyone's signing up for something. Because like, if let's talk about like, TikTok for a second. If you're already established on there and already had content populated in that big boom in 2020, you probably had a significantly better chance of gaining a lot of followers in that boom than somebody else that was signing up and starting to populate during that boom. So you just increase your odds having those moments when you get to a platform before everyone else does. So that's the number one thing I'm always like begging celebrities. I'm like, please sign up for Musically. Before it was TikTok, I'm like, please sign up. I promise it's going to be big. I was begging people since like 2016.
Wow.
So it's and a lot of them, but a lot of artists still won't sign up until that boom or till that proof of concept, and that's their prerogative. And I understand that, but it's my job to advise them on what I think is best. And if they don't take that advice, I don't get offended by it. I know I gave them the best advice I could, and it's not my profile at the end of the day, and they have to feel comfortable about what they're doing online.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, especially you start talking about, okay, well, how many am I on? Am I on all of them? Am I finding where my audience is? What's some thoughts that you have on just managing social as a whole? Because a lot of these small business owners are either doing it themselves or maybe they have someone on the staff that's helping with that. So it can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, especially because it is the thing that's tough about social media is that there's always more to do. It's not like a finite job that's completed. It's not like your taxes and the form is filled out and it's done. Like, social media is never done, and like being at peace with that is hard sometimes because there's always more you can do. There's always another post you can make. There's always another platform you can join. You could always be commenting more. You could be running more marketing promotions. You could be running more ads. There's always more you can do. So I really like to try to ingrain in people that we need to like do things in steps versus Googling how to run my social media the best way possible, because that's kind of like Googling how do I run a marathon and it telling you run 26 miles tomorrow. Like, that just doesn't work. You have to, a lot of those paths to marathon are going to be like, okay, you're going to walk a mile tomorrow. So like, what's our version of social media for that? You're not on social media. Okay. You're going to walk a mile tomorrow. Okay. So maybe tomorrow you're just going to simply sign up for Instagram. You don't have to do anything else besides sign up for Instagram. And then maybe over the next 2 weeks, we're going to do 2 posts on the Instagram. And then we're going to see how we net out on that month. And then think about, okay, we're going into month 2. What is our goal going to be? We're going to post on Instagram more and maybe sign up for a new platform. Are we just going to post on Instagram more? But you have to tier it and compare yourself to the month before versus trying to sign up for everything because that's what you're supposed to do. Like, it's going to make you not want to run the marathon. You're going to hurt, you're going to hate it, and you're going to be really uncomfortable, and you're not going to want to do it anymore. So I think that's really the sustainable ways to be able to tier it out.
That's great advice, especially when you think about it from the marathon standpoint. It's like, oh yeah, if you tell me to run 26 miles tomorrow, like, it's just I mean, I might think about it for a second and then I'm gonna be like, it's too much, right? Like the bigness of
Yeah,
it.
or you're gonna do it and it's gonna hurt really bad and it's gonna take you like all day. And it's just not that's not going to make people want to do social media more. It's going to make them dislike it even more than they already did to not want to be on it to start with. It's going to
Exactly.
reaffirm why they weren't there to begin with, because it feels horrible, but it doesn't have to feel horrible. It can actually, the thing that's great about your social media is you can pick who you follow. You can pick who's in your feed. You can curate it to be content that you actually want it to be. You can actually give back to people by being supportive of their projects and comment back on their posts and like them and give people encouragement. You can have meaningful conversations with people in direct messages. Like, there are, as much as there's negative things, there are some really nice things that can come from it, both personally and from a brand standpoint. I just think to take a step back and think about how you would build friendships and community in real life. Like, you would not, like, let's say you have a brand and you're going to a flea market. You're not just going to go set up at the flea market with your booth and not like look at anybody else's booth. I'm sure you might buy something else from somebody else, or you might tell them their booth is nice or their product is nice. Like, you're in real life, you would probably do that. Like, it's the same thing on social media. You don't just want to sit in your corner and make everyone come to you. Like, no, like, get out and like see what other people are doing and give them the encouragement that you wish that you had. But that part can actually be really rewarding. And a lot of times you're making people's days by, saying something genuine about something that they're doing. It can be a really nice thing. But I think we get away from that sometimes.
Oh, of course. I mean, well, first, the message is always like social media. What's most people reaction? Like, oh, right? Like, it's kind of huff and puff. But at the same time, it is one of our greatest opportunities for growth. Like, 20 years ago, we did not have the opportunity to put up a post and bring in clients, right? I mean, we're old school advertising at this point. But, I can pick up my phone, you can pick up your phone, anyone can at any given moment and put up some content or engage with people, and that has the opportunity to turn into something or to grow you. And, I just think that we get so hung up on the negatives that we forget exactly what you just said, that one, we get to curate it, but two, like, we literally have this little power box in our hands or on our desktops.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. And I do think that, and this is one of the things I really liked about social media, like in the very, very beginning, when like Pure Volume and MySpace came onto the scene, I was like, wow. And the music side, this gives bands who may not have known somebody more opportunities. Like, they may not have the connection to a record label or an uncle that's a big manager, or whatever the case may be. And more people at least get a shot. And that's what I think is really powerful about social and music, but in business in general. Like, most people, it's additional shot that you wouldn't have had in the past, or it's a shot you can have without having to take out traditional advertising or having to spend money on a storefront. Like, you can take a shot with less resources. And I think that there's something really powerful about that.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Sometimes you can see, hear, feel, and maybe even taste your vision, and then those pesky thoughts like to jump up and get in the way. The ones that tell you that you can't, you're too far behind, you need more skills, or no one's going to buy this from you. One of the most powerful parts of being with other like-minded people is having a space to talk that shit out loud, to get feedback, different perspectives, and to start seeing things from a different angle, to start leaning into the possibility. Now, look, I'm all about self-empowerment and being able to do things on your own, but I'm also all about learning from other people and raising your vibration, your energy, and your possibility, because you're around people that remind you that you're insanely capable. The Gutsy Collective is the space for this, my friends. So if you're looking for community, collaboration, you want to move shit forward, and you don't want to do this stuff alone anymore, go to LauraAura.com and sign up for the Gutsy Collective today. What are your thoughts or recommendations on people that do just feel kind of overwhelmed by it? So it kind of feels like, I'm going to put it off. I know all these things, but to really shift that energy and the focus on, this is an incredible tool for you.
So I think a lot of people get hung up on socials because they feel kind of uncomfortable talking about themselves. They feel like it's egotistical. And I get that. And sometimes it is. Like, there are people who post like that on social media. So I totally understand that perspective. And something I like to encourage people to do, if they're sort of there's two things I encourage people to do if they're sort of getting hung up on even wanting to do it to begin with. The first thing is, block 10 minutes a day for social media. And it doesn't, you don't even think about making a post yourself. Block 10 days social media to be supportive of other people. Go like other posts, go comment on other posts, go give people, that a follow, or go give a brand that you think that you found that's cool a follow. Go just be supportive of the community. And it's kind of showing up and listening, versus like showing up to perform or like take the stand. Just go spend some time, maybe for a month, dedicate like time in your calendar to listening, 10 minutes a day, whatever it is, but actually put it on your calendar. I think that is really helpful. I do that with a lot of my clients. Like, this is your time to shoot content, or this is your time to post, or whatever it is. But scheduling, I think, can be something that's really, really powerful. And then something else I like to encourage people to do in regards to like getting more comfortable about like why social media is, I do this with artists a lot. I say, pretend it's the 1970s. Why do you make music? Why do you have to have this job? Why can you not live with that? Why is this your calling? And understand your goals. And then I like to say, use social media to get to your goals, but don't make social media be the goal. So I think if you know why you're doing what you're doing, you can see social media as a tool versus like a end all be all, and take the pressure out of it. But make it, you shouldn't work for social media. Like you make social media work for you. And at the end of the day, they're actually pretty simple platforms. Like Instagram started, there's culture around it, of course, but Instagram started as a tool where you post a photo. If you have a photo that represents your business, you can post it. TikTok started as a platform, post videos. That's all it really is. It's like a new version of YouTube. It's a place where you post videos that are shorter and in vertical content. That's what TikTok is at its core product. If you take the culture out of it, that's all it is. So think about, how do I make a video for this platform, taking the culture out of it? Because really all it is like platform for video. Instagram now posts video, of course, but it was platform for photo. Twitter was platform to do text on the go. Facebook was at first just a place to say what you're doing. It was also text. Like, all these started based upon sort of hardware developments in the technology world, and the social media platforms just kind of piggybacked off what was happening on our phones. So, Twitter it was kind of a result of texting, right? And then I think Facebook was kind of a result of like college students having laptops for the first time. Instagram was a result of everyone having better cameras on their phones. And TikTok is a result of everyone having better video on their phone. So that's all it really is a place to post this stuff that all of our phones can do. is really what all these platforms are a result of.
I love the you'd like simplify things so much. And I love that
I like
because
simplicity.
you and me both, my friend, because it gets noisy, right? Like, things feel complicated, and we're watching, how everyone else is doing it and how many more platforms, and we make it complicated. But if we just pull back the layers, I love what you said about don't make social media the goal. It's a tool. Like,
Yeah.
it is literally one of your available tools to help you market and grow your business.
Yeah. And make it work for you. Because otherwise, if your goals become certain amount of likes or certain amount of followers, then you're working for social media. You're driving traffic to their platform. You're building their numbers. You're driving up their valuation. Like, you have become an employee of theirs that works for free, basically. So you have to figure out how to make it work for you.
Yeah. And I think also finding, or maybe I should say allowing, your own voice to come through, right? I know that you talk a lot about that, like really just honing in on who you are and owning that kind of authenticity, and just using your voice as who you are is one of our greatest tools that we shy away from.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people try to be like other people that they see being successful, or maybe they're inspired by that person in some way, but that's not who you are, and nobody becomes the person that inspires other people by being like somebody else. So I just like for people to really think about why they're doing something. I think that can be really powerful in terms of dictating what your social media content eventually becomes.
Yeah, I agree. For me, how I kind of discovered that was just by playing with it, honestly,
Yeah.
trying things out. Because I think that, again, we get in this like, oh, I have to sit and figure it out. I think the figuring out is in the doing, right? You put something out and you're like, oh, that doesn't really resonate with me, or I don't really like that, or that's not sustainable to me, just really kind of trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So, what are your thoughts on finding your voice online and really starting to feel comfortable showing up as yourself? Because a lot of
Uh,
people run from that.
yeah, I agree that you have to. It's the same thing with life. Like you have to do things, and you're gonna like some things, and you're not gonna like some things, and you're gonna be bad at some things and get better at them. And that's social media. Like your first post is probably not going to be great. It's probably, I mean, some people get lucky on that, but most people don't. Most people's story is not having their first post be like amazing and go viral. That is definitely not what's happening. That's for sure. You have to, it takes practice the same way you're not going to show up to volleyball practice and be like amazing and hitting amazing serves and spikes the first time. That's not going to happen. You might get there one day, but you're going to have some fails, and you're going to have to learn some other basics before you have those big moments on the court, so to speak. You're going to have to make some posts. You're going to have to be like, oh, that text got cut off at the bottom. I guess I should have done the captions higher. Or, oh, that cropped weird. Or, oh, that video compressed a little bit. Like experience goes a long way, and it isn't permanent. You can archive, you can delete. And usually if something fails in social media, the thing that's really awesome about that is that it failed probably because nobody saw it, so it doesn't matter anyway.
That's very
Nobody
true.
saw it. It failed because not a lot of people saw it, so go for it, because if it's not good, the algorithm's probably not going to show it to anybody.
I
So you
mean,
don't
that's
have
true.
anything to worry about. Yeah.
That's true. The four people that run to like your post are maybe the only ones that saw it, and that's okay.
Yes, we're okay with that.
Yes. So I know another thing that really hangs people up is, man, people are keyboard warriors. People have a lot,
Yes.
people have a lot to say. And so you get these trolls and you get these negative Nancy's and all this stuff. Thoughts on overcoming that, because that's not going to stop, right? It's how do we manage and handle it?
So I think the fortunate thing is that is until you have success, you're probably not going to see that. So I do, as much as it can be painful to see some of the stuff that people say, it does mean that you made somebody care enough about something. And it does mean that you're probably starting to reach more of a critical mass and having some success. So that's the upside. But listen, I think there's nothing that prepares you for like your first set of really horrible comments. I know when I've gone through that, this, because I've helped a lot of my clients go through this, but I remember sort of the first time I went through being like trolled pretty hardcore personally. It's really tough. Like nothing's off limits. Like it's a lot, like the way you look, the way you sound, your character, a lot of really horrible things can be said. I do think that the good thing about it is that in some way you do get used to it. Like once you've kind of gone through your first sort of round of it, the next one is easier, the next one's easier, and eventually you don't care. And I work with a girl named Lauren Gray, and she has like 54 million TikTok followers. She's 21, and the level of like not caring about horrible things that people say about her is amazing. She really does like not care about, I mean, I'm sure she maybe cares about certain things a little bit, but overall she handles like people saying pretty horrible things about her with such grace. It's so admirable. And I think a big part of it is that she's been doing this for a while. She's been doing it since she was 13. So she has a really thick skin when it comes to it. But she just, I don't know, mentally stays healthy and knows how to, you know, take sometimes there's some good points in the criticism in terms of like things that like maybe you can do better or points that you didn't think about. But most of the time it really is just a reflection of somebody's own issues with themselves. If they're criticizing how somebody looks, I'm sure that they have a lot of issues on how they perceive themselves. I'm sure if somebody is calling somebody lazy, I'm sure they're ultra critical of if they themselves are lazy or not. Like anything that somebody's saying really is a reflection of an own issue that they have, because if they care enough to comment on a post, one, to make a account that's secret, that happens a lot with trolls, like they make an account that is a secret account, but two, they care enough to like say this stuff to people they don't know, they really have some own personal issues with the topic. Like they're really really unresolved with some issues in certain areas of their life, and I just have to like remind myself of that sometimes, and almost in a strange way kind of be sympathetic to them, like, because I can't imagine how miserable my life would be if I wanted to like make a Instagram account to like make mean comments to people. Like I would, if I was in that headspace, my life is probably pretty horrible for
Yeah.
whatever reason, and I'm in my own like mental prison. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think they're all really important things to take into consideration when dealing with this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's 110% projection. And exactly to your point, like to be in a space where you feel comfortable putting out hatred, it's like, whoa, I know that kind of hurts or stings here for a second, but it really does help to, I think, kind of soften things and not internalize things when you're like, wow, what is that person going through? It's not
I
for me
can't
to.
imagine. Like I really feel for people. Like if they are, or feel the need to, like, there's some accounts that there's even some accounts that like, because so I work on, my company works with Britney Spears, and when she was going through the conservatorship, I became a target for, and I still am a target. Like there's some accounts I feel like they exist to troll me. Um, I became a target through, a lot of what was happening with her, even though I really had nothing to do with that part of her life. And I had a hard time with it at first, but now I really feel for a lot of those people in different capacities. And also, like, I think with that particular situation, I do believe that a lot of people genuinely have good intentions towards her, and I try to remember that too. That doesn't justify some of the things that they say about me and my voice or my appearance or that sort of thing, but it's, I think understanding why somebody might be doing it and that they might be dealing with their own personal issues on these topics is, kind of what has kind of kept me going through some of these situations.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine working with these people that you are a natural subject that kind of comes along with it, right? It kind of puts you in that line, in that light. However, what's the alternative? To not do the work that you love to do, to not support these artists to put out their creations? Like, you know what I mean? Like I think that it's helpful to just kind of pull back the layers sometimes and be like, okay, well, what's the alternative? Stay quiet, not be seen, and not do what I love? Like
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
not okay either.
I think for the most part, try to stay quiet on most of the projects I work on. In my world, it's, you can get, a lot of people make a lot of assumptions based upon like who you work with, how many things you're working on. I remember there was this one pitch where I think we nailed it and did a really good job, and we didn't get the project. The bid went to somebody else, and I asked, why did we not get that bid? And it was because you work with too many big artists and you seemed too busy. And that, that's just a really big I get their perspective, and maybe they've been
Sure.
burned by another company and with a, a similar situation, but I really took that into consideration and like think about like how much I show people. Or a lot of people can make assumptions on your work based upon who you work with, or they may not want to work with you because you work with a particular artist or that sort of thing. So I think a lot of times with, with my work, I keep a lot of things pretty close to my chest and don't share a lot of stuff on social media because of that. I also a lot of times don't share what I'm doing personally or even where I'm at in the world, because people make assumptions based upon that. Like I really enjoy going to work from Hawaii, for example. And I actually get more done there because I wake up early. I'm very motivated. The like East Coast, West Coast is already rolling, so I can just jump in and like I like wake up and I'm like I'm in it. But like by 2 o'clock, I'm done. And then I get like I get daylight back. Like I can be outside for the end of the day and swim, which is very therapeutic to me. But people make a lot of judgments by if I spent a lot of time working in Hawaii and posting about it. Like they're like, if I didn't answer an email fast enough, that's immediately going to be the reason why, or they're slacking because of this, or why do they get to do that and I don't. So sometimes I've gotten to the point a lot of times where I don't even share that stuff because I feel like it unfortunately creates more negative than positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a solid point. Everyone's looking through a very singular, tiny lens of your life and making quick, rash decisions on what that means or it doesn't mean.
Yeah.
So I think that everyone needs to kind of gauge for themselves what that looks and feels like, right? Like if that's part of your like why wouldn't you want to work in Hawaii? You're more productive. It feels good for your body. It's good for your mind, right? We're talking about mental health here. We're talking about exposure to nature in this gorgeous place, and you're helping people along the way. Like, what is there to judge about that? Why does anyone give two shits on how you spend your time or your money? You know what I mean? But the
Yeah.
reality is they do.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people make assumptions on like how much that might cost, and I am awesome at travel deals. That is like that's like my a secondary passion. I've been booking trips on Priceline since I was 12 because I wanted to figure out how I could afford to go see the Backstreet Boys. So I'm awesome at like knowing how to do a nice, comfortable version of Hawaii at like the lowest cost you possibly can do it at. And but a lot of people just assume like, oh, because like you're taking a walk on the Montage property, you're staying there and
Yeah.
you just wasted $20,000 that week. And by the way, if I want to spend $20,000 on the Montage, I don't think that somebody should be judged for that. But I'm not. But if somebody wanted to, that's their prerogative. They earn the money and they want to spend it there on a week in an awesome hotel. Like, go for it. Like, contribute to the economy. Maui needs it right now. I don't care. But people just make a lot of assumptions. I think about like what my staff is thinking about me. I think about what my clients are thinking about me. And I'm really, I really, kind of think about that sort of stuff. And I've sort of moved like sharing those moments to, if I want to, if I send it to my friends directly. And I think that that's something to think about on social media too, though. Like, I think that can be some positive things about like what you do and don't share. Like, because I think sometimes people do share to like just to like be perceived a certain way.
Agreed.
And because like there's a difference between like posting you being on a private jet because like you're excited and it's the first time you've gotten to do that, or you feel grateful or that sort of thing, versus like posting on a private jet just to be seen on a private jet. Like, I think people have to understand why they're sharing that stuff. And are they, because sometimes that kind of stuff can create negative emotions in people. So it's a balance. And I think you have to figure, again, you have to know why you're doing things, even if it's like sharing parts of your personal life. Like, why do you and don't you share those things? What is the purpose of it?
For sure. Yeah, it's a good just kind of internal check-in. What is the why? Does it feel
Yes.
good? All right, then put it up because it's your page and you're allowed to. And if you don't want
Yeah.
to, then you don't have to. You don't have to share a damn thing.
Yes.
So circling back around, right? You've started your agency, you're running things, you had built this Backstreet Boys stuff from the very beginning. And now you're actually working with them, right? Like you're behind the
Yes.
scenes of the Backstreet Boys, which is absolutely incredible. Total side note, by the way, I feel the need to tell you that growing up, AJ McLean was my crush, period. Like I had an AJ wall in my bedroom, right? As we all did with the teen magazine cutouts and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And ironically, my husband's name is AJ.
He would love
So
that story.
yeah.
They really appreciate like people liking them. He was actually, I'll never forget this. Me and him were at dinner one night with my business partner, and he turned to me and he's like, "So who was your favorite? Like, who was it?" And I was
Who
like, "I
was
don't want
it?
to talk." And I was like, "I don't want to talk to you about that." And he's like, "Well, I know it wasn't me because you would have said it." And I was like, "Oh, you're so right." Um, but
Taught me.
yeah, but I was like, I almost like felt bad that he wasn't my favorite in that moment, but he wasn't. He was my sister's favorite for sure, and that fits her in every aspect now.
Absolutely.
But he would like that. So
Yeah.
just side note, he would
Well,
appreciate that.
maybe he'll hear this and we can high five across the room. So how, and because I feel like everyone's like, okay, how did you gain the Backstreet Boys as a client? So what did that look like for you?
It was a slow dipping a toe in the water kind of situation, because I already had Britney Spears as a client before I had them as a client. So that's kind of like an easy way in terms of showing like I have experience in this genre and I can work on a high level brand. But I knew their team for way longer than like for a while before I started working on it. Like I didn't go in and pitch it and get it. Like I knew the team. I would do ticket buys like from them to go to the concerts. Like I knew them, but I didn't work with them. And because I was scared to, it's kind of the don't meet your heroes sort of situation. And I didn't, I have them built up as a certain thing in my head, and I didn't want to ruin it, because it's a really important part of like why I do what I do and why I like music. And I after the it was the NKOTBSB tour. Um After that tour, I felt like that tour was the best experience I could ever have had from like a fan perspective, in terms of going to multiple shows. I got pulled up to be the girl on stage that they sing to. Like that was
Wow.
amazing. I lost my mind. Um
Rightfully
I
so.
Yeah, and it was not like because I knew people, it was because I knew where to sit in the audience to get picked to be that person. I think everyone around me thought I was psychotic before the show. I was like, okay, so like they come over here and like Nick picks his person from over here and it's gonna be me, and they're like, okay, like crazy girl, whatever. And then like it happened like as I envisioned it. It was
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
But I had all the great experiences, and at that point I was just kind of like, you know what, this is my tap out as like the fan. I'm ready to put myself out there to work on them, and me and my business partner put ourselves out there to do like a trial run, and it worked out, and we're still doing it today, and it's been really awesome. They did not ruin my perception of them. If anything, I think it's enhanced it. They're all very kind and very like open to our background as super fans, and I think embrace that versus seeing that as a downfall. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the lesson in all of that, my friends, is to to try, right? To put yourself out there. You are only working with Britney, you're only working with Backstreet Boys and all these other amazing people because you put yourself out there, right?
Yeah,
And you believe that it had the opportunity to work.
and with Brittany, it was interesting. So I was living in Nashville at the time, and I was working. There was this amazing woman who had worked at digital at Warner Brothers, and we both kind of started like sort of left Warner and consulted on other stuff at the same time. And I was like baby temp Cassie consulting, and she was like powerhouse, like digital warrior, like made the first website for an artist and first digital download type of warrior, like true pioneer when it came to digital. She was incredible, and I really looked up to this woman. And somehow we kind of we knew each other like vaguely, and I was very down on the totem pole at the bottom, and she was at the top, and we were both at Warner. But we both ended up consulting on Nashville Star, and so that's where I actually got to spend more time with her. And I feel like I was very intimidated by working with her, because she's tough, and um and I really respected her. But I think we did a good job, because after that season ended, she emailed me and she's like, hey, I'm looking for somebody like what you do, but lives in LA for Britney. Do you know anybody? And I responded and I said, I don't live in LA, but I would for that. And that's, but I remember I was really nervous sending that email, because that's not what they asked for. They asked for somebody that lived in LA. They didn't ask if I wanted to do it, but I knew that, that I would be willing to go to LA to work on something like that. And fortunately, I was able to work on it and not have to move at the time. I do live here now anyway, but um, Britney was on tour at the time, so it didn't really matter where somebody was at that moment. And it ended up working out, but I'm really glad that I had sort of the guts to say, like, I know you didn't ask about me, but I would like for myself to be considered for this.
Yeah. I mean, it's the prime story of if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yes, it truly is. And you have to be like, you have to ask the right way. Because I think sometimes people ask stuff that they, and I don't want to say they ask stuff that they shouldn't, but I think sometimes people ask the wrong way, in an entitled way. And you have to be really like humble in that moment to be, because you have to be humble but confident. Really tough line to sort of follow. But I think in a lot of those times, simplicity can be really helpful. Like, you're not like overselling yourself, but you're also like saying, hey, like, I'm interested, if, and I'd be willing to move. If not, cool, happy to kind of take a think on who else might be good. But, I would like, this is my first suggestion, is me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful line, right? It's this balance of confidence and, being humble, asking for what you want, and you don't have to over explain it, right? Like, less is more in a lot of cases.
Yes.
So to kind of wrap us up here today, I would love to know what tips and like social guidance are you giving your star clients right now that some small businesses might be able to adopt into their lives right now as well?
So back to the early adopters thing. You don't just have to be an early adopter of social media platforms. You can be an early adopter of tools that are coming out. So one tool that's still kind of rolling out, you've probably seen it already on Instagram, is Broadcast Tool. It's awesome. I'm sure it'll get saturated at some point and nobody will want to sign up for more broadcast tools, but right now they are pulling in good numbers. So Instagram Broadcast, when it is available to you, definitely get that tool. I think it's really, really awesome. That, would be one thing that I highly recommend. And then another thing that I think is being pushed pretty heavily now, and I think will be pushed pretty heavily in 2024, is TikTok Shop. That's definitely being prioritized in their algorithm right now. You still have a moment to be an early adopter with that tool. So that would be the other thing, is if you have a product, figure out what TikTok Shop looks like for you with your product and how you want to start pushing it using that tool.
Perfect. Excellent. Those are great resources. Ultimately we're all using the same tools, right? The people that you're managing are using the same tools that we're managing. It's just
yes,
what we're putting into it and, really owning who we are behind the scenes.
Totally.
So I have loved this conversation. Super inspiring, very simplistic, like very grounded back to basics, it feels like, but so paint such a beautiful picture of what's really possible. What is the best way for people to connect with you if they want to learn more about your amazing journey?
Yes, so I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram, and it's just my name, Cassie Petrey, on both of those platforms.
Perfect. And Casey, I would love to know, what does the word gutsy mean to you?
I always reference this like Taylor Swift line. It's, not it, being fearless is not lack of fear, it's having fear but doing something anyway. And I truly believe in that. Like, a lot of times the fear indicates that something is important to you and that you should run towards it. So that's, to me, what being gutsy really is going after things even though you're scared of them anyway.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. Love the goodness that you're putting out into the world and appreciate you sharing it with us as well.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
One of my favorite parts about this conversation is how incredibly possible anything is. When we spend this time alone, when we have our heads down, our minds want to take over and all this stuff jumps up in the way. And Cassie reminded us how incredibly powerful we are as individuals by being around like-minded people, how that helps support, and by honestly asking the question, putting yourself out there, giving yourself the opportunity to even have the opportunity. Look, this girl is managing the Backstreet Boys. Have you heard this, my friends? Like, that only happened because she believed in herself. She had the audacity to ask for it, and she continues to show up and do the work. I'd love to be one of these people for you, one of the people that helps to remind you that you are insanely capable, to help push that dream further, to bring it even closer to you, right? It's this really interesting dance of looking out, casting out, and seeing how far you can go while also honing in and believing it for yourself. So go to LauraAura.com, sign up for the Gutsy Collective. We're doing some cool shit in there to support each other. And this is a space, if you've got big dreams, this is a space where you're going to be able to be held. In the meantime, connect with me on social media. Tell me what you loved about this episode. If something rung true for you, it just has you thinking. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me using @thatLauraAura. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.